the very far end of National Trail Raceway. When this track was built back in the early 60s, the shutdown area was more than adequate for the cars of the period. But now, with the top classes going almost 100 miles an hour faster than they used to, you'll find a unique piece of safety equipment down here. It's called the net. In fact, in this case, it is a double net. The idea is to catch a dragster, a funny car, whatever, if the parachute and the brake should fail. How well does the net work? Well, we all found out yesterday when California funny car driver Mike Dunn gave it the supreme test.
Mike Dunn and the ride of his life. It's almost unbelievable, the intensity of the fire. The parachutes vaporized. The right rear tire explodes, shattering the fiberglass body. From another angle, you can see that right rear slick explode, breaking the body in half. The car thunders into the net. First, the initial contact, then thrown sideways into the second net. The car, ensnared in the nylon web of the catch nets, comes to a sudden stop. And with the smoke rising from the burning tires, engine, and grass, Mike Dunn releases his safety harness, jumps from the roll cage, and hard as it is to believe, Mike Dunn was able to run to safety.
Mike Dunn, you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
One of the worst accidents I've ever seen at this end of the racetrack.
Wasn't that bad.
I looked at from here. I think when you see the tape, you'll believe me. The net definitely prevented what could have been an awful bad situation.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Throttle hung wide open, and I reached for the fuel shot, and then blew up and backfired and everything else. So.
Everything went wrong that could go wrong, really.
Yeah. I was pulling as hard as I could to get that throttle back, and something got hung up somewhere.
I'll let you get up to your crew. They're concerned as we are.
Mike Dunn, one cool driver under intense pressure. While John Force hails from Fullerton, California. Force is another of those racers at the Spring Nationals that is very fortunate to be in the second round. Back in the first round, after he defeated Kenny Bernstein, John Force had his parachute look like a streamer. And once again, trying to stop the car, John Force takes dead aim on those catch nets at the end of the racetrack. Force guiding his car towards the center of the track and the center of the net, much slower than we saw Mike Dunn go into it. The net stretches, then responds and stops John Force.
John Force won the battle here, but may have lost the war. John, a good job of hitting the net as you're supposed to, and you might be able to fix this car.
We always fix them, Steve.
That's true. You've done this in the past.
I double-checked the chute twice. I didn't shove my cable far enough. My error. That's just a stupid mistake. I knew it when it didn't blossom. I went for it again. It was just too late.
Well, John's okay. The car, a bit of damage, but as he said, we always fix them, Steve.
It's the food, the atmosphere, and the people that make Louisiana such an exciting place. But it's this amber-colored liquid that gives professional drag racing its sizzle and thunder. It's called nitromethane. It costs $40 a gallon. It can be very hazardous to your bank account. The average funny car or fuel dragster consumes 10 to 12 gallons each and every run. I'll let you do the mathematics. It frightens me a little bit. At one time, 50% nitro to alcohol was considered a strong blend. Now it's a lot like a dry martini. They just kind of wave the alcohol can over this nitro. It's 90, 95% in a lot of cases. And when you have this kind of horsepower, you figure nitromethane doubles the output of an engine. A lot of unpredictable things can happen.
You have just witnessed one of the most incredible crashes in the history of all motorsports. Ed McCullough and John Collins collided at half track during a qualifying run, and this happened.
It's McCullough in the near lane. The wheels are in the air. He has no steering. Suddenly, his Oldsmobile funny car makes a dead right-hand turn and hits John Collins right where a driver's door would be in a passenger car, and they go for a tumble. Onto the knife edge of the rail goes McCullough. The car is starting to come apart. It is Collins upside down, sliding into McCullough's lane and into the guardrail. Now it's McCullough in front of Collins. Nose first into the rail, the fuel tank explodes, and Collins slides through the fire.
It is a combination of good fortune and the excellent NHRA safety standards that permit both these men to walk away from this awesome crash.
Even at this point, there was still potential danger. Raw fuel pouring out of the tank of the John Collins car. Miraculously, it did not ignite.
As the massive crowd sat in stunned silence and safety crews rushed toward the automobiles, the two drivers struggled out of the wreckage and hugged each other in a celebration of life. Steve Evans reached John Collins moments later.
John, first of all, you're okay?
I'm okay, Steve. Thank you. I appreciate it. That was quite some ride there. Both cars seemed to leave the line pretty good. My car was running on a really good run, and Ed pulled up alongside of me, and I looked out the side window. I could see him, and the next thing I seen is he drove right into the side of me.
You didn't waste any time getting onto the car. It looked like you kind of fell on your head in there.
Well, you know, I'll tell you, Steve, I skidded on my lid, I think, on the roof for I can't say how far it was, but I know it was a few hundred feet. And there was a little bit of fire underneath the car from my fuel tank, so I popped my belts, and I just kind of wormed myself out of the car, but it wasn't fun.
Both automobiles were reduced to small hunks of bent metal. This is Collins' car, shattered completely beyond repair, and about all that was left of McCullough's automobile was the big, fuel-burning, supercharged engine. Steve had a chance to talk with Ed McCullough as well.
Well, Ace, the thing that drag racers dread the most is a two-car incident like that. And first of all, you're okay?
Yeah, I'm all right, Steve. I don't know, I really don't know exactly what happened. I mean, the thing, you know, it squirted on out there okay, and I mean, it made a right-hand turn, and I mean, when it left, I mean, there was no correcting it. Yeah, I don't know.
John's okay, by the way.
Yeah, first thing I did when I got out down here is I went and saw John, and I'm glad he's not hurt. I'm glad I'm not hurt, but, you know, there's just something that, you know, you just really takes the wind out of your sails, you know.
I'll bet it does. So Ed McCullough is obviously okay, as is John Collins.
But this is a moment they will never forget.
In the grandstands then was a very young Doug Krahulis. In the staging lanes just before this race, I asked Doug, what's it feel like to race one of your heroes?
Well, Doug, when you were about 12 years old, dreaming of being a pro drag racer, no one would have convinced you then someday you'd be racing a legend, the Greek.
Oh, you're not kidding. Well, he's definitely a good friend of ours. And I've been over there trying to rag on him pretty hard, trying to get him to mess up, but he's been driving too long, so it's going to be one of those Joe Amato, Dick LaHaye races, I'm sure.
By that you mean very close.
Very, very close. We stepped on the engine a little bit, and I'm sure Chris did too.
Well, it's going to be an interesting race, as Doug says. In the near lane is Krahulis. That is Chris, the Greek Karamessinas, and that beautiful blue and pearlescent dragster, Steve.
And he loves to gold plate everything he possibly can. That's been the Greek's trademark for a long, long time. The captain of the Greek fleet out of Chicago, Illinois. Some kind of drag racing legend. Krahulis in the near lane, they leave right together. Krahulis with a bit of an edge, and something breaks in Karamessini's car. Doug Krahulis wins the race. The wing has broken off of Doug Krahulis' car. The parachute is wrapped around the wing, and this is a very short racetrack. Doug Krahulis headed for the catch net, and he just drills the bullseye on the net. Actually, it's a pair of nets, aircraft carrier style, that have gathered up Doug Krahulis' 150-mile-an-hour race car.
Well, Steve, these cars are made to go, not to stop. They have only two-wheel brakes on the back, and of course that parachute to slow them down. As we saw, Doug did not have his parachute because of this broken wing. And here at Columbus, that was big, big trouble right from the start. As you can see, the race car has crossed the line somewhere in the range of 250 miles an hour, and down comes the wing, and immediately snags the parachute, and then he's in big trouble.
Well, at 250 miles an hour, there's about 200 pounds of downforce on that wing. And apparently some component in the wing support structure broke, and as you can see, the parachute wrapped right around it. Now, Doug Krahulis did exactly what you're supposed to do. Keep the car from bouncing on the tires and aim right at that target. It takes a lot of courage to do it, and he did it brilliantly.
He certainly did. As you can see, there's a steel guardrail beyond that. The catch fence did its job to perfection, but we hope that Doug got out of that crash all right.
Well, Doug Krahulis right now has been put into the ambulance here at National Trail and is getting medical attention from NHRA Safety Safari paramedics.
As near as we can see, the integrity of the race car, the roll cage, and the rest of the safety equipment worked. That Doug was well packaged in the race car. As we see it, another impact, and the catch fence there pulls the car to an immediate halt. But of course, there were massive G-forces at work in that crash.
Well, Brock, the only information we have so far as to the condition of Doug Krahulis is that he is unconscious and obviously being transported to the hospital, and we'll relay any further information as it comes to us.
As we go back down to the starting line, here is yet another of the great drag racing legends getting ready to go, Connie Coletta.
And as Connie slips on his fireproof gloves, he has got to be thinking back to his very close shave. Also, an encounter with the net at the end of Columbus. Now, you see what happens if they get to bouncing on those great big balloon-like tires, Brock. That could be a problem in itself, but Coletta takes it right into the net at a much slower speed, however, than Doug Krahulis was going. And minor damage, really, to the race car. They put a new front end on it, and we're back here for the second round.
Well, Brock, as you're well aware, there's been some bizarre happenings here in north central Florida during qualifying and first round action earlier today. First of all, in funny car qualifying 2 days ago, in the near lane, Bob Gottschalk of Toledo, Ohio. The engine explodes, the car is on fire. Gottschalk has no idea where he is until he hits the woods, sawing off trees with 6-inch diameter trucks, setting the woods on fire. The NHRA Safety Safari got him out of the car. Again, a horrifying fire.
We've seen it so many times, an engine fire, an explosion inside one of these funny cars, and it looks as if the driver is in deep trouble. Of course, Gottschalk has lost his visibility, lost his steering, the chute's gone, totally out of control. It looks as if it's going to be a terrible accident, and with massive injuries for the driver, incredibly, Gottschalk walks away.
Watch the huge rear slings as they just explode off the wheels from the heat. Rubber flying everywhere. Now, the onboard fire extinguisher system did its job until it just ran out of charge. Then Gottschalk had to contend with the burning woods as well. This easily could have been a life-threatening situation. But as it turns out, Bob Gottschalk is back at the track after a single night in the hospital.
Well, I'm sure that Bob Gottschalk would be the first man to tell you that the safety requirements in NHRA drag racing are meant for the driver, and it sure paid off for you in that incident yesterday.
Yes, it did. I want to thank Simpson Safety Equipment for fine equipment that they do put out.
Bob, it's one of the, I guess, drivers fear fire more than anything, and you just came away with some burns on your hands, and that was just where this, as I understand, where the stitching burned away on the gloves?
Right, the stitching burned some blisters on my hands, and my thumbs burnt pretty bad where I had to unfasten the seat belt.
But considering the amount of fire and the time you were in the fire, you got to just feel really happy that all that equipment worked as well as it did.
Yeah, I'm very happy and very lucky to be here.
Amen to that. The main reason Brock Yates is talking to Bob Gottschalk right now is that the NHRA Safety Safari team arrived at that car in 14 seconds from the time the fire erupted. Just incredible. Is the one to watch. They blast off the starting line side by side, but at the three-quarter mark, watch the car in the near lane. A tremendous supercharger explosion.
Well, basically the same thing that happened to Bob Gottschalk, although Joe Amato's engine is behind him and out in the open, so the fire, while spectacular, had none of the dangerous implications that the Gottschalk fire had. Joe was able to deploy the chute, roll to a stop, and what's more, he was a victor.
Now, Amato has been fighting this kind of supercharger problem. You'll remember our coverage of the Winter Nationals. He blew a blower off, beating Don Garlitz in the same way. Earlier today, he beat Gary Beck. Now, the rules require restraining straps on those superchargers to try to keep the pieces on the engine. With this kind of force, I'm not sure anything would hold him down.
Those holes are where the blower attached to Joe Amato's motor. So complete was the destruction, it looked as if the mechanics unbolted it. When Joe got out, Steve was there.
Well, somehow the motor held on long enough, Joe, to get the wind light, but it is destroyed.
Well, it just blew the blower off, basically. The bottom end is probably okay, but you can't keep blowers off every round.
That's the second one this weekend.
Yeah, you know, there's something plaguing us a little bit here in the mechanical part of the car. We're going to have to get after it and get it straightened out for the next round.
Did you feel you had enough momentum to get there first?
Yeah, I thought I pulled away pretty far on Gary, you know, and my plan was to let up on the car and not run it through, but as it turned off, the blower went off before I had a chance.
But Joe Amato is victorious in the battle of the giants, but a new motor is going to have to go into this car.
Take another look. That is Harold Denton in the far lane, and that black and silver Firebird completes the run here at about 160 miles an hour. Things look about under control, then at a snap spin to the left, up against the guardrail, and down into the dirt, throwing off pieces of fiberglass as he goes. But, Steve, it doesn't look as if the car sustained a whole lot of serious damage.
It looks a lot worse than it really is, Brock. You see the front end fiberglass flying away. The deck lid will now leave the automobile. These cars cost about $50,000 to build, and probably for $3,000 or $4,000 Harold can repair the car. I really think when the chute was not deployed, maybe got on the brakes a little too hard, maybe a tire went down to cause that spin, but the chute was not out until it backed into the guardrail. Harold was okay, and we talked to him right after the incident to get his point of view from the cockpit.
I really don't know. It made a perfect straight run, and just as it got through the finish line, it felt to me like maybe the right rear tire went down. The chute came out, but it would never recover. It began to get a little crossways, and I got it back 2 or 3 times, and then next thing I knew, it was going around.
That I believe is still raging underneath the engine compartment.
Well, the fire crews are on the scene, and the safety personnel are now going to right the car, or at least attempt to, in an effort to get Rick Boy out.
Still not on that car.
See the fluid pouring from the radiator.
Oh,
now the fire breaks
worse.
out once again in the engine compartment.
Working to try and get Rick out of that car. Rick Boy, boy, some very anxious moments here.
There he is.
A helmet. He is out of the race car. Oh, I believe he's in okay shape.
What happened?
Well, just got a little loose out there and tried to drive it out and went crossways. And when it gets sideways, the tires kind of roll over that right side did there. And that's about all you can do. They'll flip, and that's, you know, we just tried to drive it out there, and I just got a little bit too far around. That's all I could do. So we're going to try to, you know, try to get everything back together for next year. And I feel like we'll probably come back.
Is this the worst crash you've ever had?
Not in a funny car, yeah. But I've wrecked another car about 5 or 6 years ago. So it's, you know.
On the right-hand side of your screen, you see him there blowing a gasket. Hot oil comes from the engine and sprays over the top of an already steaming engine. It ignites. Now, Carenti is down inside the car, the belts and the bars. A few anxious milliseconds here. Where is Carenti? Where is Carenti? He's not out of the car. The flames are erupting at the San Francisco-type fire. And finally, out of the top, out of the escape hatch, Carenti is out, rolls onto the ground. A very lucky...
Yeah, all of a sudden, it's all in pieces. Yeah, we kicked the rod out about half track, and it was uncontrollable. I've never seen anything like it. It just caught on fire. Must have got on the headers or something. Hot oil got on the headers, and it's a shame.
You're okay, though?
I'm fine, yeah.
Are you going to be able to put anything back together to make the show?
Oh, no. It's a mess. We don't have another body with us. We're going to have to renew the whole deal.
In the far lane was against Dave IHRA. IHRA drifted across the center line into the center line lights, and then a rear-end collision at over 240 miles an hour. Both cars were essentially destroyed in this horrendous accident, but as we have seen so many times before in NHRA championship drag racing, both drivers emerged from the wreckage unhurt.
Well, as final race car driver as Dave IHRA is, I have a feeling that whatever happened to his car, he probably had no control over it.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't his fault. He said he thought he hit a light down and then it just threw him over the other way.
In fact, Dave IHRA, Dave, I know that when you got out of your car, you were more concerned about Ron's condition than your own.
I felt fine. I was just concerned about Ron.
Do you know what happened?
The car started drifting. Right coming into the first light, I hit the parachutes, and apparently I hit the first light, and that's what sucked me right over the other lane.
So the throttle didn't stick or anything like that?
I believe it was stuck a little bit because I was trying to get off the thing, and it just kept on going. That's when I went for the parachutes, and it hit the first light, and I think that's what sucked it right over there.
Leo, last to stage, taking his time, put a little pressure on Glidden. Leo is finally into the beams. They leap right together. Identical reaction times. This is going to be a classic Ford versus General Motors drag race. It is. It appears. Oh, Glidden is upside down. Glidden in big trouble. Oh, this is a bad one, Brock.
It is indeed. Got into that fence. The car continues to flop and roll. It looks as if the roll cage stayed together. There's sheet metal and fiberglass all over the racetrack. The NHRA safety crews instantaneously on the scene. So far, no movement from Bob Glidden, though. Everybody in this place. Etta Glidden being consoled by Warren Johnson's wife, Arlene, obviously very concerned about her husband, who's there he comes.
Bob Glidden is out of the car. Bob Glidden appears to be as okay as you could possibly be after a horrendous crash. Let's take a look at it again. The parachute is the culprit. The parachute did not come out properly, yanked the car to one side. Thank the Lord Butch Leal was clear of it, or it could have been even worse. Into the rail, upside down, nose first. And now the worst thing that can happen, flipping on top of the guardrail like that. Now this car is the first one that Glidden has ever owned that had a funny car style roll cage, and I got to think that probably saved his life.
You're absolutely right. The car into that fence at around 185 miles an hour, still rolling, 6.5 full rolls. You see all that bodywork coming loose, but you don't see any of the roll cage coming apart. Bodywork, you can lose. Roll cage, absolutely critical to the survival of this world champion. And it appears at this moment that he is going to be all right. Well, there's the world champion standing tall and straight, being consoled by his oldest son, Billy.
Bob, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Oh, boy. It's a miracle to get out of that one.
All I can do is thank the chassis builder, Jerry Haas. You know, I don't know what happened. I felt the back of the car come up, and it went over, and I just put my arms around my head, and I was just in there riding along.
I hope Etta knows that you're okay.
I'm sure she does by now. I'm waiting for her to get down here. She'll surely be here before long.
Again, glad to see that you're okay. That just happened instantly.
I don't know exactly what happened.
Well, proving once again that these pro stock cars can reach out and bite you at the most uncertain moment. Interestingly enough, it appears that Glidden won that race. But Steve Evans, I don't think there's any possibility of him returning for the final.
Not only that, I don't think there's any possibility that that car will ever race again. It is destroyed. Again, right at the finish line, watch the parachute. It is not out straight and billowed. It pulls him to one side, and this is what happened. As bad a pro stock crash as the sport has ever known. It took 4 or 5 hard impacts on the roll cage. One side of the cage, the passenger side, collapsed, but not the section where Glidden's in, because it's built much like a funny car. He's tucked inside that steel tubing.
A lot of the energy was absorbed when Bob ran into the steel guardrail on the edge of the track. It acted as like a bit of a big rubber band and did absorb energy. There you see the car just flopping over and over down the racetrack, just rolling off kinetic energy, finally to come to a halt in the middle of the racetrack. No fire, and of course the giant crowd now concerned that Glidden gets out all right, which fortunately brought about a happy ending.
Brock, Etta Glidden has just arrived on the scene running to see if her husband is okay.
See, I lied to you, hon? We're in good shape. Okay, bud? Oh, yeah.
In this part of the country, this could be a freshly plowed field awaiting a second planting of soybeans, but it's not. It's the sand trap at the end of a rather short National Trail Raceway, and its purpose is to catch errant race cars. It's really more gravel than sand, varying in depth from about 6 inches to 3 feet. Now, just past the sand trap is a breakaway fence and then Refugee Road, which the local constabulary closed down anytime the hot stuff is running. And across the street is Herb White. Now, he's never had a visiting race car,
but he must have had a premonition, because this year he moved his garden.
By Gary Phillips in a qualifying attempt in funny car eliminator. Gary Phillips met the challenge of the sand trap and ended up in Herb White's front yard. Once again, the safety regulations of the National Hot Rod Association proved their worth as Gary Phillips emerged unhurt. As we watch again, Phillips approached the finish line, the engine exploding into a ball of flame, the fire continuing to burn, Phillips trying to maintain control of the vehicle as it crossed over into the other lane of the racetrack. The parachute deployed, but the car began to come around, the left rear tire exploding from the heat, the body melting into a mass of fiberglass. Incredibly, Phillips continued to steer the car, and as these graphic pictures captured by our Diamond V Sports cameraman Jeff Kelty proved, he entered the sand trap head-on and came to a slowing stop in Herb White's front yard. Jody Smart is in the cockpit. Ray Stutz, a Californian racing here in Ohio, in the near lane. Both cars approaching the starting line very gingerly. When they're set, it's a green light start, and Ray Stutz pulls to a big lead. But here comes Jody Smart. It's close at the finish, and it is Ray Stutz by half a car length. The crew very happy with the performance, but look, no parachute for Jody Smart. He's approaching that sand trap, trying to get the car slowed down, and the sand trap does its job. It goes just across the road and comes to a halt once again in Herb White's front yard. Looking in replay, you see Ray Stutz. He has got about a half a car length lead the last half of the racetrack. He holds on to that to the finish. But while the race was over, that's when the action really began for Jody Smart. He attempted to deploy the second parachute, but it failed to come out in time. Smart slid across the gravel, the car slowing drastically. Smart drove it into the fence, across the road, and into the field.
What goes through your mind? Keep it straight. Don't try to turn.
Yes, through the years we've seen what happens to people when they try to turn, and you really get into a lot of trouble there. So you got to go right into the pit, what it's made for, and it really works great.
Jody Smart obviously okay, the NHRA safety safari moving the car, and other than a little bent bodywork, I don't think it's hurt that bad.
About the top fuel dragsters? Well, Big Daddy Don Garlits accomplished his long-time goal of setting the national speed record at over 270 miles an hour. It ended up at 271 miles an hour, backed up in the books. In the process, he recorded the quickest elapsed time in the history of drag racing at 5.34 seconds. How badly did Big Daddy want to back that up? Watch this.
With the touch of a true master of his craft, Garlits regained control and drove the car through the cloud of tire smoke back toward the starting line. The streamlined dragster came through the crash in remarkably good condition, considering the potential for damage. Garlits calmly went about the task of shutting down the engine, unbuckled his safety belts, and climbed from the cockpit, giving the cheering fans a victory salute. The NHRA safety safari was right on the spot, but unneeded. The 54-year-old Garlits was uninjured. In slow-motion replay, the accident is even more incredible. Rarely do you see a wheel stand carried to its ultimate conclusion, that of turning over backwards, but it happened to Garlits. As the car went faster, the front end climbed even higher. From another angle, you can see Garlits' problems started the moment he began his run. The small front wheels left the ground almost instantly, touching down only once or twice as the car accelerated rapidly. The aerodynamic nose piece cupped the wind, raising the car till it eventually reached perpendicular, then over on the rear wing. It rotated 180 degrees in a ballet-like pirouette and slammed back to the pavement. The engine still delivering power, the rear slicks trying to move the car forward, thereby halting the backward slide. Garlits finally hit the brakes, and the car stopped, concluding the final chapter of one of the most bizarre incidents we have ever seen.
Big Daddy, you okay?
I'm just fine. My feelings is hurt is all.
And the world's quickest and fastest dragster took a bad hit, too.
Yeah, it turned over backwards.
You've had some harrowing experiences, but that was an unusual one.
It was very unusual. It, you know, it just, I knew it was gone. It got so high and then it wouldn't come back. You know, I backed out of it early, but it didn't make any difference. It was accelerating too hard, and even though the throttle was off and everything, it didn't make any difference. It caught wind underneath it.
Any chance of repairing this car?
No, this car can't race at this event. I'm not that crazy.
The hottest new driver in top fuel racing is in the lane nearest the camera, and he puts a tremendous hole shot on Marconi. Marconi very late off the starting line, and Gwynn with a brilliant performance as Marconi continues on, and Marconi's parachutes have not opened. The car streaking down the shutdown area, beginning to bounce as Marconi hits the brakes, and those huge rear tires acting like rubber balls. It almost turns over, and Marconi puts it into the guardrail and the fence at the end of the racetrack. His wing supports catching a tree limb as he made the turn off the racetrack, but the car stayed upright. Let's watch again as Marconi battles a bucking Bronco. You see the sparks coming off the frame rails as the car bottoms out on the asphalt. Marconi now driving on the center of the track, trying to pick the best spot. What do I do at this point, he says. The engine trying to slow the car down. He's now got all four wheels back on the ground, but still has a lot of speed to burn off. The car trying to make the turn, rocks up on those two wheels, comes back to the ground, and Marconi heading straight for the guardrail, just nudges it. Just enough to turn him into the trees with the wing struts, and he brings the car to a halt.
Well, few drivers have ever experienced more in their very first drag race than Jerry Marconi, and here you are about 100 yards off the end of the racetrack. A little frightening.
It sure was. I don't know really what happened. We have to check. My chutes for some reason didn't work, and I went for the brake, and it started the thing bouncing. I knew I wasn't going to stop when it was bouncing, so I got back off it again and tried to come back on the brake easy, but it still was bouncing. And I says, well, guy, here we go. Let's start looking for a place to go, and that's what I did. I picked this grass spot here.
Any temptation to
golf ball?
Any temptation to go back to the boat after this weekend?
Not at all. That was, believe it or not, I'm not that. I mean, I was scared. You know, I respect the machine, but I think we got it under control.
Looks like you got a bright future, my friend.
I think I do too.
Both cars now staged. Oh, Whiting red lights. Whiting has red lighted, so it's going to be an easy win for him.
Henderson spoke to the car, and he's not sideways. Hank Henderson, the engine is still firing off as he goes over the wall backwards, upside down. Hank Henderson, a spectacular one.
Just a terrific crash. The car sideways goes over the steel guardrail. It has now come to a rest with the car smoking badly. We're watching closely for some movement inside that roll cage. The IHRA safety personnel on the scene almost immediately. You can see a medical personnel there, and you can also see a fireman on hand to make sure that no blaze erupts. But just a terrific, horrifying crash by Hank Indris. Let's hope for the best.
Bob, I know we have not seen any movement yet, but keep in mind that these cars are specifically designed to keep the driver down inside. First of all, the replay now back up to the front end of this. You can see the red light vividly here on the right side as Whiting takes off. And then down the strip, Endress is going down, getting close to halfway. And now we're getting reports that apparently some crews are suspecting that some liquid was getting onto the left rear tire, putting the car into a slide to the right. Of course, drag racers are not meant to go sideways. Whatever that liquid was getting on the right rear tire put him into that spin. He goes over the wall. You know, at first glance, I thought he had gone over the wall upside down, Bob, but going over right side up like that is a good sign.
You can see the car overturning and finally coming to a rest upside down. You can see the wheel still turning very violently, digging a hole, as a matter of fact, in the grass where the car finally comes to a rest.
All the drag racers are equipped, and we've got some movement in there. Hank, although is obviously stunned.
Okay, any pain here? Okay, any pain up in here?
Guys, start on the track.
Okay, slowly forward, slowly forward.
Yeah, he is moving. It looks good.
Get your coat off. Get your coat off and go. Okay, cool off back here. Don't do it itself.
Some dramatic moments here, Bob.
Okay.
We'll just listen to the conversation down here at the scene of the crash.
Go that way.
but boy, that is just unbelievable. You see he's a little groggy, but to get out of an accident like this and walk to the stretcher is just a tremendous thing to see, and the crowd also applauding. I'm very glad to see Hank Indris apparently okay. He's shaking, there's no doubt about it. Anybody would be after that such a terrific crash, but
ain't bad for an old man, I ain't sure.
I'll tell you what, appears to be okay.
Huh?
The tech director from IHRA that investigates firsthand, up front, close and personal, every crash is on site, but you can see Hank is shaking off the effects of that crash, and I am astounded but very pleased, needless to say.
Here once again is the crash. The car getting sideways and then almost immediately overturning to its side and sliding on its side off of the pavement itself and onto the grass. And then, as the car moves on, it does strike the guardrail, goes back up on its wheels, over the guardrail, then flips upside down once again and comes to a rest upside down. But Hank Indris has climbed out of this mess on his own and appears as if he is going to be okay, but of course they'll check him over at the local.
As the cars come down the drag strip, Coletta is out front, Holiday trailing behind, when obviously some mechanical problems begin to happen. And watch the body on Holiday's car literally disintegrate before your eyes.
Surprisingly enough, he got the chutes out, he got the car stopped, and Doc Holliday was okay.
Well, Doc Holliday is out of the car and says that he's okay. That's the good news. That was a rather unusual incident.
The throttle stuck and it just wouldn't shut off. I finally had to reach over and hit the fuel shut off.
And that banged the blower?
Banged the blower and blew the body off, and that ran over the lights.
Well, you know, I know when you got on the center line, I guess you were fighting that stuck throttle.
Yeah, I was trying to pull the throttle back. Nothing was happening. I just finally reached over and hit the shut off. And the car was out of control, so there was really not much I could do with it.
We're glad to see you got it shut down.
You and me both.
Well, at John Force's only other win, it was not televised. It's televised today. Congratulations, John Force. Darrell Gwynn, a final handshake from his father and crew chief Jerry as he inches up to the line. Gene Snow's machine is crackling with power and ready.
You know, John, anytime you have to monkey with a camshaft, it's dangerous in one of those engines. They could have that thing off just a couple of degrees. It would make all the difference in the world, because these cars are fine, too. Look at Darrell Gwynn. Darrell Gwynn is gone like a rifle shot. Snow up in smoke. Darrell Gwynn has won. Darrell Gwynn has lost a tire off the left side of that vehicle. Darrell Gwynn, you see the car lifting to the left. Oh, how frightening, John. Oh, I'll tell you, what a driving job. That thing wanted to get over to the center line, but Darrell held her and brought her to a safe stop. Bet he's glad to be getting out of that thing right now, let me tell you. Oh, and what a shocking sight he sees.
Darrell Gwynn, this is going to the finish line. As we look at the left rear of the car, an explosion there as the chutes come out and the car drops down. Darrell Gwynn has to fight to keep it under control.
A tremendous driving job. Watch how the car tries to come over to the center line when that wheel comes off. Look at that, and Darrell has to hold it back. Tremendous amount of power to hold on to that steering wheel like that. A good thing the chutes were already out, because he couldn't take his hand off the steering wheel.
The chutes definitely a critical factor here as they stabilize the car once they come out and help it go straight. Let's go to Steve at the far end with Darrell Gwynn.
Well, at the very moment, Darrell Gwynn must have been thinking to himself, that's 3 in a row, that's 3 in a row. The left rear tire left his race car, and what a magnificent job of keeping this machine off of the wall and right side up he did. Darrell, you're okay.
Yeah, Steve, I'll tell you, it's about the most scared I've ever been in my life. Right in the lights, as soon as the parachute went out, the tire blew. It seemed as though all I could do was just steer it and try and keep it. It just kept wanting to turn over every time I open my eyes, let's say.
If at all possible, let's try to put that behind you. That's 3 in a row. Our congratulations on that and on your sportsmanship in not forcing the issue with Gene Snow. You wanted to race.
That's right. I wanted to beat him fair and square, and I didn't necessarily want this to happen, but we'll be back in 2 weeks, guaranteed.
And with $30,000 on the line here and points that could ultimately be worth $150,000, that's more than sportsmanship. That's a real desire to compete.
That's right. We talked about it, and there's enough money at stake and enough points and corporate people involved here that we wanted to just race, but at the same time, we wanted Gene to be just beside us.
Oh,
Well, I'll tell you what, you gave us all a thrill and a fright down at the finish line again. What great driving.
And the crowd was really anticipating a number from the Texan after that 493 and 88 at Houston. What they got was this. An oh my God, upside down backwards flip. Eddie Hill was okay. And Don, as we look at this again in slow motion, there's absolutely no doubt as to what caused this.
That's right, Steve. It lost a front wing. In other words, the front wing slipped back and the car took off just like a plane would do. It was completely out of control. There was absolutely nothing he could do with it.
So that front foil is supposed to provide downforce. Instead, it was just the opposite.
That front wing is as important as the rear to keep the car stable on the ground.
Just a spectacular incident in the life of Eddie Hill. And as it flew, it just peeled like a banana.
It sure does. All the pieces come off the car, Steve. It just flies apart. Those are magnesium body panels. They're the first thing that goes.
I talked to Eddie in the on-track hospital.
You feeling okay?
Yeah, I don't think I got hurt at all. Banged my knees just the tiniest little bit, and I got a little pain right here, but I'm looking awful good.
So many pieces of these race cars are your best friends, Don Prudhomme, and that parachute has got to be one of them, as John Force found out in round 1 at Pomona. When your best friend turns on you, you're in trouble.
That's right, Steve. And as he's approaching the quarter mile, he's thinking everything's okay until he tried to open the chute. No chute. The handle apparently slipped in the car, a chute malfunction, and into the sand pits he goes.
It looked for a second like maybe he thought he'd try to swerve and avoid it. Thought, nope, let's take her head off, and he turned turtle.
I said, put her in the sand, but I never thought she had dug in. That baby dipped on me, hooked the nose, and what a ride.
Your family's down here, John. Let them know you're okay.
It was Butch Leal against Frank Sanchez. They were paired up in qualifying. After the two cars went through the timing lights at the far end of the racetrack, Sanchez in the near lane lost control. The car overturned, and Leal had to make a choice. Rather than run into Sanchez, Leal turned left and hit the guardrail instead. Both drivers were uninjured. Leal described for us, from his perspective, what it was like.
Well, what happened is that we were running down through the quarter mile here at the Southern Nationals, and I pulled the chute out, and the chute came out, and I looked up, and Frank was right beside me, and I noticed the chute didn't come out, and the next thing I know, looked like he hit the brakes to me, and sort of got it sideways, and the wind caught it, and next thing I know, it's upside down right in front of me, and I got to get in the left lane, and I tagged the guardrail and destroyed my car, and looked like I'm out of the race. I got a car at the shop, but it's about 12 hours home and 12 hours back, and we're going to see if NHRA will let us get the new car, or our old car, and bring it back and try to get it and run in this race. This is our sponsor's race, and we're running pretty well here, and we just have to see what happens.
Qualifying pair. It was two Pontiacs, Chuck Ekmalian in the far lane, James Antoinette in the near lane. Very quickly into the run, Antoinette drifted towards the center of the racetrack, lost control, the car flipped over on its roof, and burst into flame. The fire was contained primarily in the engine compartment, and the NHRA Safety Safari crew was quick on the scene. Meantime, Antoinette was inside the car, attempting to exit under his own power. As we watched this accident again, Antoinette had gotten very close to the center line. That portion of the racetrack and the outside edge out of the racing groove is a little bit slick. As I pointed out to you earlier, this is a brand new racing surface, and it is not quite cured yet. A number of racers, including James Antoinette, who was uninjured in this accident, were having problems with it.
The car just went towards the center. I corrected it. I felt it was going to go straight, and all of a sudden, this car's is fast. That's the only thing I can say, and things happen so quick. You know, it's my first national event, and I had some practice with the car, but I guess I didn't have enough.
I'm Steve Evans. What you have just seen is one of the most spectacular drag racing incidents in recent memory. It was R.C. Sherman living one of the most striking experiences that a funny car driver can have. A car completely and totally out of control. As always, the NHRA Safety Safari was on the scene immediately. The jaws of life had cut away the roll cage. The NHRA emergency team administered treatment to an alert but visibly shaken R.C. Sherman. Sherman was carefully moved to the waiting ambulance and on to the hospital for x-rays. Happily, aside from bruises and a sprained hand, he was all right. The same, though, could not be said for the race car. It was a total loss. In replay, we see R.C. Sherman of Maryland in the near lane. This was qualifying for the Citgo Cajun Nationals in Baton Rouge here at State Capitol Dragway. Sherman's car slowly veered to the right, out of the racing lane, into the marbles, the loose rubber. There it lost traction. It headed to the left. Sherman trying to regain control, but it is not to be. He appears to have come very close to the wall, maybe have brushed it. Suddenly a right turn, throttle wide open into the rail. The body exits the machine, the parachute lines acting like an umbilical cord to the chassis as Sherman tumbles down the racetrack. From yet another angle, R.C. Sherman on the right side of your screen. Losing traction, billowing tire smoke, trying to control the car right there. The body touches the guardrail. It shifts and holds the throttle wide open.
Well, the car left the line and it felt like it was on a pretty good run, and then it went right a little bit, and then I remember it smoking the tires. And when it smoked the tires, it got a little crooked toward the left guardrail, and I lifted, and when I lifted, it was like I didn't lift. It might have come back to half throttle, or it might have stuck at full throttle. I can't really remember. I went into the left guardrail at a pretty shallow angle, and I was trying to steer it down the racetrack because I figured if I can just keep it in the racetrack, I can do something to get it stopped. But I couldn't keep the car out of the left guardrail. And then once it hit the left guardrail, then it was out of control. And I remembered, the last thing I remember was seeing the right guardrail coming. When I look out of the windshield, I saw the right guardrail coming straight at me, and I knew I was flying. And I said, this isn't going to be pretty. And then I don't remember a thing after that until they were trying to get me out of the car.
And today, American Sports Cavalcade has come to the peaceful farm of Herb White in Hebron, Ohio. Now, why would a long-running motorsports program like ours pick a very quiet location like this? Well, you see, really, it's not all that quiet one weekend a year. That's when Herb White lives on the edge. I mean, how many farmers do you know that have 3-row-high guardrail in their front yard? You think Herb's maybe a little paranoid about the country lane? No, Herb has legitimate reasons for concern. What keeps his eyes wide open is what's across the street. The sand trap at the end of National Trail Raceway's quarter-mile drag strip that is supposed to stop cars that can't.
The track was a little loose. It was a fair, decent run, I thought. I got to the other end, and I let the chute go, and when I let the chute go, I go right to the brake handle and shut the motor off, the fuel off, you know, and like I couldn't feel the tug. So I started pushing hard on the brake, and I could see I was running out of area to get stopped. So there's only one thing left to do is let the clutch out and run it down on the motor, and it used up a lot of area, and I kept looking down the track, and I could see this orange fence. I said, oh, no, not this. But it was comfortable. I mean, it went over, and I know I went over, but it was, you know, it didn't bang me around too bad. I kind of feel all right, but my back pocket's going to be sore.
Good start. Both drivers off the mark well. But it is Kenny Townsend who had problems having to get off the throttle, and Brady Bryant. Hearst, Texas goes on to win it at 6:42. No shoot again on Brady Bryant.
And he's not going to get it stopped, Steve. He heads straight for the sand trap and all the way over. Bryant with a crash down in the sand trap. The front end of the chassis bent all around there. That's Ronnie Davis from the NHRA Safety Safari, one of the top paramedics in his field. And obviously he is talking to Bryant, so Bryant apparently is okay and able to talk to his rescuers.
Well, Grady Bryant was carrying far more speed than Vern Moats, which is why he got into the gravel pit. It's really more gravel than sand. Now watch the front end. There he's got a lot of speed, and suddenly that speed comes to nothing, and he is picked up by the air traffic controllers at the Columbus Airport.
Well, Bryant went through the traps at 217 miles an hour. That kind of speed absolutely mandates that you have the chute behind you to get the thing slowed down. Well, with no chute, all he could do was hope that the engine would carry it down a little bit and pump the brakes. That took him into the trap at the end. When the nose went in, look at that, a perfect pirouette as it flipped end over end and almost got it right back on the wheels. But when the front end hit in, it just bent the front of the car around. But Ronnie Davis was right there, and apparently Grady Bryant is okay. Steve is still close to the accident scene, standing just a few yards away.
The situation down here is that Ronnie Davis, NHRA's emergency medical technician, is with Grady Bryant. The car has been righted. Grady says he's okay, that he feels fine, but that they're taking every precaution. And I believe they're going to escort him over to the ambulance and let him sit there for 15 or 20 minutes to be absolutely sure that he's okay. Report that this man, Grady Bryant, after a few minutes in the back of the ambulance, the little birdies all kind of went away and you're feeling good.
I got the cobwebs cleared away. I just kind of depressed, got my feelings hurt. Here we are, 4th in the nation, leading the division, and had a problem like this, but that's racing, Steve.
Well, I doubt you could repeat the exact words as you entered the trap on national television, but I'm sure you knew you were in deep trouble.
I knew I was in trouble. Parachutes didn't open. It's nobody's fault. It's one of those things, but thanks to the sand, we didn't go in the trees, and that's what helps.
Could you have braked any harder? Anything looking back that you would have done different?
No, we had a real good pass going that time, and we was trying to stop as hard as we could. And we got it slowed down. It was a real slow roll, and that's what helped.
It was veteran Don Prudhomme in the far lane against Nitro newcomer Don Gay in the near lane. As they left the line, both cars smoked the tires, but Don Gay stayed in it. The car veered violently left and hit the wall hard enough to knock Gay unconscious. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, a fire started under the body and began to burn uncontrollably. Sheer momentum propelled the car into the other lane and into the opposite guardrail. A helpless Don Gay was trapped in a fiberglass inferno, unable to pull the lever to actuate the onboard fire extinguisher. Then something happened that I have never seen before in all my years of covering drag racing. One of the fire bottles exploded, shattering the front end of the car and actually intensifying the flames. As always, the safety safari was on the scene quickly and had the blaze under control within seconds. Then, in an act of courage and heroism, Don Prudhomme, still dressed in fire suit and helmet, plunged into the fray to help free a fellow racer from what could easily be described as a life or death situation. Even though the fire had been extinguished, the metal parts of the car, including the seatbelt harness and roll cage, were still very hot. And Prudhomme's quick thinking made a big difference when seconds counted. Then it was up to NHRA paramedic Ronnie Davis to revive the still unconscious Don Gay, whose immediate problem was smoke inhalation and respiratory failure. In replay, we see that Don Gay in the near lane smoked the tires right from the green light. As he tried to pedal the car to stay in the run, there was just too much power being put to the ground, and the car veered left, filling Don's windshield with guardrail. The resulting collision knocked Gay unconscious and ripped the exhaust headers away from the engine, releasing heat and flame that ignited the fiberglass body. It didn't take long for the flames to begin to burn uncontrollably. And with Don Gay helpless to trigger the fire extinguishers, matters could only get worse. And get worse they did. Flames lapped at his face and body. Even though he wore full fire protection, temperatures inside his fire suit would soon rise to a point where the sweat on his skin would literally boil. And smoke would begin to penetrate the breather mask in his helmet. Then, with the car finally rolling to a stop, one of the still pressurized onboard fire bottles could no longer take the heat and burst with a force that ripped the fiberglass body to shreds. And the body, through all of this, lost its integrity completely. It could not be lifted up as you normally would. It had to be ripped off the car. Prudhomme, having experienced situations like this, knew instinctively what had to be done and did it.
Don, other than being on fire yourself, there's nothing more frightening than seeing a fellow competitor having that particular problem. You were the first one there.
Well, especially with Donnie Gay, you know, he's a young kid and he just started doing this business, and I know what it's like, you know, and you just got to try and keep your cool. And when we got to him, he was completely out, and I've been in several of these myself, as you know, and you know, he just needed to take it easy, you know. With NHRA and their safety safari and everybody here, they just do a great job. I mean, if it wasn't for them, you know, to bring him back around, because he was completely out, I don't know if he'd have made it.
Well, I'm sure they thank you for your help.
Well, anything we could do, especially a kid like that.
And Don Prudhomme would be quick to tell you that any funny car driver, dressed for the occasion as he was, would not have hesitated to jump in to the fire. Stationed just a few yards away from the flaming wreckage was the Flight for Life helicopter out of St. Anthony's Hospital. Don Gay Jr. was then choppered to the facility in downtown Denver. And what had been one of the strongest funny cars in drag racing was turned into an ashen heap. We are very happy to report that as of this morning, Don Gay Jr. has been declared out of danger and is expected to make a full recovery.
In pro stock racing, four-time 1989 event winner Bruce Allen's first-round victory over Gary Brown is one that he will remember forever. The run itself was another picture-perfect win by the Rare and Morrison Beretta. But as Allen crossed the finish line and popped the chute, the car swerved to the left and slammed into the guardrail, narrowly missing Gary Brown. In replay, it does not appear that the parachute was the culprit. More like a gust of wind caught the chute and pulled it to the right, causing the rear end to slide out. That put Allen out of control, and once he lost it, it was inevitable he would go into the guardrail. The remarkable thing is that neither Allen or Brown got caught in each other's parachute lines, which would have resulted in much more damage to both cars. After the initial impact with the guardrail, Allen's Beretta then crossed back over the track and ended up against the right-hand guardrail. After the car came to a stop, Allen reached up and shut off the electrical equipment. Allen himself was unhurt, but regrettably the same could not be said for the Beretta. It sustained major chassis damage. Obviously, Bruce Allen's day was over, giving a bye run in round 2 to Bob Glidden.
But of course, the night of fire means jet cars, and this was something spectacular. In the right lane, Lynn Redmond, but watch the left lane and Bruce McCombs when the lights come on and he puts down the throttle.
Bruce McCombs driving the flash fire jet, and there's a flash fire, Bob.
A lot more than he ever bargained for. Redmond lights the afterburner and scorches away at better than 200 miles an hour, but you know every eye on the racetrack was on the start line where Bruce McComb was struggling to get out of his flaming racer.
McComb actually stole the show. Bill Bader had engineered a beautiful fireworks show, actually down each side of the track, but everyone was watching the starting line. The BTS crew now on the scene trying to get that fire put out.
There you see McCombs being led away at the front of the car, and look at the conflagration raised by that explosive jet fuel.
Those flames actually reaching 30 feet in the air as that car literally melts to the ground. They have a fiberglass body, and when the glass reaches a certain temperature, it begins to melt. The crowd very appreciative of this show.
But it's one that you can only do once, as Bruce McCombs burned flash fire absolutely to the ground. And Brett Kettner was standing by afterwards to talk to the man.
How are you doing? Are you feeling okay? I'm feeling okay. Except my pocketbook took a big one here. My pocketbook. We're going to have to go. Thanks a lot. I tried to put the extinguisher on here.
And in case you couldn't hear him, he said, "I'm okay, but my pocketbook took a big one here today."
Well, there's no doubt about it. As we look over the melted body, or what's left of the body, it's turned into silly putty right now. The beautiful flash fire jet is now a molten hulk of, looks like lava or something.
Lava it is. And here's a look once again at what happened to Bruce McComb. Temperatures in the afterburners of these jet cars reaches over 1,000 degrees, and when it caught the fuel supply, the immolation began.
It's actually a double explosion taking place. The fuel tank had ruptured and there was a leak, and jet fuel was pouring out on the ground underneath his car. Of course, McCombs didn't realize it. When he lit that afterburner, he just set the whole thing off.
In the far lane. It looked like it was going to be a real good race. Then Oswald got into some trouble with the traction, and Hendy went on to win. But it wasn't a win like he wanted.
Talk about a panic. The throttle stuck wide open on that car. The parachute at that speed really couldn't do the job, and into the sand trap went Art Hendy. Now, he executed that just perfectly. Drove straight into it, trusting NHRA's design, and it paid off for him. No major problems as far as the chassis was concerned. The body had some obvious cracks in it. The biggest situation they faced was finding a hose. This was earlier in qualifying. Near lane, Harry Scrivener. Far lane, Rich Marino. Watch the red car. The only pain was in his wallet.
An e-ticket ride for Rich Marino. Don, in this situation, what can you do to save it?
Well, he's trying to steer it. Watch the front wheel as he turns it back and forth. He's doing the right thing. The car just was not responding. It was slipping too hard. It had too much speed, too much momentum.
One thing he could have done was to pull the parachute, but you're so busy sawing on the wheels, you need a third arm to do it.
Yeah, he couldn't do that, Steve. He was too busy steering the car. He couldn't take his hands off the wheel. I've been in that situation. And all you do is you tuck in real tight and hold yourself in that cage and in that seat to keep from getting bounced around in that car so you don't get a lot of broken bones. And boy, does it feel good when that baby comes to a stop.
Especially after having taken an inventory of all your body parts and find that you still have them all. That was the case with Rich Marino. The car, a total loss.
David, the dedicated personnel of NHRA's Safety Safari had a couple of challenging qualifying days here in Houston. It all began with top fuel driver Jimmy Nix. At long last, in the home of NASA, a rocket was actually launched. Now, you think that was scary in real time? Watch the slow-mo. At the peak of its flight, Nix's engine was running full blast, wide open, stuck throttle. It landed in a blaze of tire smoke until that engine mercifully expired into a ball of fire. He was totally unhurt. Then came the drag racing version of Halley's Comet, as indeed we had ignition on Scott Coletta's funny car. Coletta did a fine job of driving. He was A-OK, the body pretty much abused. Scott's father, Connie, relieved that his son was unhurt, then crawled into his top fuel dragster and suffered the most devastating crash of them all. Out of control in the shutdown area, head on into the Armco guardrail at well over 220 miles per hour. In replay, watch closely. You'll see the wing support stand collapse, the car unloads, and Connie was merely a passenger. The Safety Safari crew used their jaws of life to cut Coletta from the car. He was medevaced to Houston's famous medical center and diagnosed as having 2 broken ribs, a collapsed lung, and a badly bruised leg. David?
Steve, obviously the good news is that Connie is well on his way to recovery. We've had tremendous amounts of rain here at Houston Raceway Park in the early days of the event.
Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Evans, and welcome to a windy and weather-threatened Lake Grand National Molson. Now, over the 20 years, Don the Snake Prudhomme has been particularly popular with this crowd, and not just because of his French surname. He's also been the winningest pro driver with 7 funny car titles. Now, this year, everyone looking forward to seeing Don's brand new top fuel dragster. They saw it yesterday in qualifying from angles no one could have anticipated. Don Prudhomme in an absolutely terrifying, over-backwards, over-the-wall crash. The engine still running, spewing fuel as the car stopped, but miraculously, the Snake was okay and into the arms of the safety safari. Working with me today, Brock Yates and Big Daddy Don Garlits. Don, you have unfortunately seen this kind of an incident from inside the cockpit on 2 occasions.
Well, it wasn't quite as bad as the Snakes. I didn't get over that guardrail like that, but I'll tell you, it's a terrifying experience when you go up straight into the sky like that and you got no control of the car.
Right off the starting line, the front wheels were bouncing as the car struggled to get up on the tire. Suddenly, when it came off of the concrete pad, the clutch hooked up, and it was over.
They call this a blowover in hydroplane racing, and it is very similar to the reaction aerodynamically that happens to a speedboat.
Don, look how it just peeled the body panels off.
Actually, that's good. That slows that blowover down just a little bit. On my car, the body didn't come off. It went over and hit much harder.
Now, the wing struts were so strong, they prevented the car from going right down in the roll cage instead of roll over in the tires. And here, the rear tires, Don, are still spinning. The engine's under power.
That's because he's got his foot braced against the throttle pedal. He's waiting for this tremendous impact. He knows it's going to hit something.
And when it does, it is with such force that the chassis right here just accordions. That is chromoly steel. The rear tire spinning against the rail, pull the car over the rail into the grass. And again, Don Prudhomme survived unscathed, one of the most spectacular top fuel incidents ever.
Somewhat shaken, Prudhomme was greeted by his family as Steve Evans was there.
Don Prudhomme, wife Lynn, his daughter Donna. Don more concerned with their feelings than his own. He's obviously okay. You're all right, Snake?
Yeah, I'm all right, Steve.
You race a whole career, 25 years, almost incident-free, and in 1 year, it's incredible.
Yeah, I know. It just started to come up on me there, and it was, you know, picked him up a little bit and set him down, and then it really came up. I don't quite understand it right at the moment.
Well, if you stay between the walls, that's one thing, but when it went over the rail, that's when you frightened us, and I'm sure yourself as well.
Yeah, I didn't know where I was at, obviously. I mean, I thought, oh, no, you know, I grabbed the brake and tried to stop it and everything, but it was just too late. It just went over center, and it was over with.
This was the third of 3 major crashes Prudhomme experienced in the past year. The first came in December '89 at Bakersfield, California, when a brand new car during a test was destroyed in a very similar crash, a blowover that fortunately Prudhomme was able to walk away from uninjured. Then another crash, a major engine fire in Dallas, Texas, destroyed that automobile. Now back in Montreal, as the crew cleared away the wreckage, Steve Evans asked him if this would affect his top fuel plans.
Not really, Steve. You know, I made a commitment to do this, and it was just something that happened. It's just like any race car accident. You know, you have to evaluate what went on and make sure it doesn't happen again.
What's your family saying, Lynn, Donna?
Well, you know, it's rough on them. That's the problem with a situation like this. They're here, they see it all, and it's tough, but, you know, I'm sure Foyt, Mario, all those guys, their family's been there too, and they've been in accidents. It's just part of the job, you know. Unfortunately, these things happen.
Well, that was yesterday under beautiful blue skies. Somebody forgot to tell Johnny West. All he's got in here is an echo. There's some oil over here. There's enough nitro maybe to get through this race. He might have to borrow a couple of gallons. His biggest asset, this electric welder and his gas welding equipment. Because if this car breaks, Johnny West fixes it himself. Just goes to show, if you chase the dream hard enough, you might catch it. And in the far lane, Chuck Etchels, his pockets aren't very deep either. That's another team that runs very lean and has to be very careful with all of their parts and pieces. Right now, they put it all on the line. And even though Johnny West may not have a lot of spares, I guarantee you everything that is on the car is first rate.
And I can tell you one other thing. Johnny West has run 560s on every run, so Etchels knows he's going to have to go down and turn the wind light on.
Either way, we'll see a first-time winner. Johnny West hard into the wall. Etchels goes on to win it, but Johnny West has suffered severe damage to his home-built race car. The body is torn off the right side. He continues to make contact with the wall. He better stop that car. This racetrack comes to a very abrupt dead end. There's a highway on the other side and a wall. Oh, this is not going to be pretty.
Oh, what an impact. That is a driver's worst nightmare. Hitting something like that so solid.
Johnny West is in big trouble, obviously, at the end of the racetrack. NHRA safety safari immediately on the scene.
if you're going to have this kind of problem, you want to have it when these guys are around. A flash of fire backs them off, and they again go in to attend to Johnny West, who is still strapped into the cage of that car. Let's have another look. Near lane, Don Garland.
Watch this car carefully and watch the right rear tire. You'll see some sort of liquid get under it as it passes through your screen, and the car immediately hits the guardrail. What a tremendous impact. I personally feel that Johnny West was knocked out at that moment and no longer knew what the car was doing. The throttle was hung partially open, so as the fuel began to get to the engine, it got faster and faster. A driver's worst nightmare. Unconscious in a so-called runaway car, and then to hit a solid guardrail at the end. A terrible accident.
And as if Johnny hadn't been through enough already, this was all climaxed by the car being vaulted into the air. Emergency workers, NHRA Safety Safari, Raceway Park crews on the scene, clearing up the debris, but more importantly, attending to Johnny West, who is still in the car. And the report is that he is conscious. He has regained consciousness and is talking to them. Boy, that's some awful sweet news after what we've seen.
Back at the Summer Nationals near Englishtown, New Jersey, Johnny West's racing luck just ran out. Fortunately, he escaped without serious injury, which is hard to imagine as we take another look at this incredibly violent encounter with the retaining wall. Hard to believe that anyone could survive that. Steve Evans.
Well, here is what remains of the body of the Johnny West funny car. The chassis has been impounded by the state of New Jersey. That's the law here. I'm with Dr. Joe Oliver, NHRA physician. What can you tell us, Dr. Oliver, about Johnny West?
Johnny West, unconscious at the point of impact when we arrived at the scene, was still unconscious, regained consciousness during the process of removing him from the car. His blood pressure and vital signs are stable, and the prognosis is excellent.
Things have not been all peaches and cream for some other competitors this weekend. This is Carl Ruth during an attempted qualifying pass, and watch as he takes the ride of his life. What a shame indeed. He ripped the body. That's the only 1956 Ford Crown Victoria ever built for Nitro Funny Car Racing. He built this car just to race Tom McEwen. The car's still going. The engine's still on right there. Finally, he brings it to a stop. Thank goodness he wasn't hurt. The doctor on hand will check him over, and he was just fine. Scary moment, though, for Carl Ruth, who ripped the left side rear tire absolutely off the car. Let's take another look to see if we can see what happens. Watch what happens here as Carl Ruth gets over near the sideline. Now, he doesn't lift. He actually should shut the car down at this point. He gets closer and closer to that center line. You'll see him get past the 8th mile light. Now he comes up on the 990-foot light. Now he's to the finish line, and there he hits the cones. That starts the body disengaging off of the car. The air pressures at about 200 miles an hour do the rest of the work. You know, I think what may have happened is he blew that left rear tire. He may have cut the tire, and somehow the left slick went away and tore the bodywork. At any rate, you can see the reaction when the air got under it, as Ted described. Carl Ruth, very, very fortunate to walk away from a Titanic Nitro Funny Car crash. Carl Ruth will rebuild, I imagine. He worked on this car for a long time. Look at him hit the guardrail right there, and the guardrail does the job it's intended to do. It keeps him back on the track, keeps him from getting upside down or even on his side.
But in his first round race with Al Hoffman, disaster struck. In the single most violent engine explosion I have ever witnessed, Mark Oswald was like a billiard ball on a pool table, caroling off the concrete guardrails at the Texas Motorplex until the car, dragging the parts and pieces behind it, finally came to a stop. Obviously battered by the concussion of the explosion and the impact with the guardrails, Oswald was helped from the car by the NHRA Safety Safari crew. The vehicle itself, after the initial fire and explosion, was nothing but a rolling chassis. As we look again, you can see where the problem started for Oswald. A part broke in the valve train. That allowed a cylinder to fill with fuel. The engine hydraulic and exploded into that giant fireball. The safety requirements demanded by NHRA certainly proved beneficial for Oswald. With the chassis sideways in the racetrack and Mark wrestling for control, the car slammed into the guardrail with heavy impact. Mark knocked from side to side in the roll cage. Steve Evans was there.
Mark, considering how little control you had with a blown tire, you did a heck of a job.
I just tried to stay as straight as I could. Steve had just had oil and everything all over the front of the visor, and you know, I really couldn't understand why I hit the guardrail. I thought I held the car pretty straight, but they said it pretty much lifted the car right off the ground.
What were you doing when you put your hand in your glove way up in the air?
I was trying to see if the body was still on. I was feeling for the roof hatch to see if I was going to have to get out or not. I couldn't tell if the body was still on.
Well, banged up a little bit, but basically you're okay?
Yeah, we'll be back. I'm fine.
Hard to believe that California driver Russ Collins was uninjured in this blowover incident. Working with us today, three-time Top Fuel champ Big Daddy Don Garlitz, and you have experienced this, Don.
This is the phenomena of Top Fuel that you just can't hardly do anything about. The car goes out of your control. You cannot react fast enough to make any changes. You just hang on for dear life.
But one thing, Don, we had not seen before was that spiral Greg Louganis effect.
Well, Russ Collins was very fortunate that every time the car hit, it hit on something that absorbed energy, the front end, the rear tires, the wing struts, and that's what kept him from getting injured.
Again, we emphasize the car may have been a total wreck, but Russ Collins was absolutely unscathed.
A blowover like this, every driver thinks about it when he leaves his starting line. There's been so many of them lately.
Yeah, I really never thought about it. I never worried about this car doing it. And I always thought, you know, watching Ormsby and Hill and the rest of them, I thought, I'll stop it. But trust me, there is no way to stop this guy. And as fast as I think I am, boy, there's no way. It is instant. Just instant.
As we see it again, remember Big Daddy's words, how that car landed on points of absorption. The tires, the wing struts, the front wheels.
Without a doubt, the glamour division of the sport, but also the most dangerous.
Absolutely. Big trouble in Top Fuel at the California Nationals for veteran pilot Jack Ostrander. A valve hangs, the blower pops, ripping a tire. The rods kick holes in the block, igniting hot oil. And at top speed, the rest is inevitable. Jack Ostrander is headed for the wall in a fireball. Although Jack was apparently not seriously hurt, the NHRA safety safari took no chances and gingerly extracted Ostrander from the smashed car.
He is awake and alert right now. He's conscious. He seems to be pretty well oriented. He's got superficial burns on his face. Also, there are some burns on his right hand. His vital signs are good. His blood pressure is good. His pulse is regular. And he's being transported by helicopter now to a local hospital. And he was unconscious for a while, so he'll have to have some head injury examinations and also for neck injuries and that matter. But I think he's going to be okay.
Translation: he was just fine and showed up at the next race. But he wished he hadn't shown up in Dallas, Texas at the Chief Nationals later in the season in his backup car. In qualifying, there was more big problems for the man from Michigan. Once again, he found himself hurled into a concrete barrier at over 200 miles an hour. And although there was less fire, Jack Ostrander had to know that his racing luck could get no worse. In replay, we can see exactly what happened. Just after the finish line, the chassis appeared to break right behind the engine. Then the force of the parachutes deploying caused the rear section of the car to separate completely. At that point, all control was gone, and Ostrander was a helpless rider.
Jack Ostrander is shaken, obviously, but he has survived his second terrible accident of the season. You okay, Jack?
Sure. I don't know what happened.
I don't think anybody's sure what happened. A lot of things may have happened.
I don't know. The motors look like it's still together. I don't,
2 in 1 season, that's more than any man ought to have to experience.
One's enough. Believe me.
One's too many. He's fine.
With that, Jack Ostrander's season was mercifully over.
David parts and equipment. Nobody does that anymore. Oh, and he bangs the supercharger right off of the starting line. It's a good thing he was on a single run. He'll advance to the final four, but that crew will have a lot of work to do. Oh, Donnie's waving his hands. What's going on?
Well, the engine is still running. He's actually trying to stop the car. He cannot stop the car. Evidently, the blower lifted off the manifold. The engine is sucking enough air and fuel to run maybe, 80, 90 miles an hour. Who knows? He has got some problems, Steve.
He is picking up speed. Even though the parachutes are out, he is going into the sand trap. Oh, my. A disaster for Corey McClenathan. We can only hope that he is okay. NHRA Safety Support already rolling to the scene. He did what any driver should do, Don. He took it into the sand trap. That's why it's there.
That's why he was waving his arm so that nobody would pull in front of him. He knew he could not stop the car.
And great news, you can see Corey McClenathan of Anaheim, nearby Anaheim, out and okay.
Well, the incident that happened 3/4 of a mile away started before the rear wheels even crossed the starting line, Don.
You can see the fuel come out of the rear pipe as Corey McClenathan must have felt the car lose traction slightly, backpedaled the car, and of course that blew the blower. The blower lifted off the manifold, causing the engine to run away. He could not stop the car even though the butterflies were shut. He ended up into the fence, and of course that's the fuel tank exploding.
Well, Corey, you knew you had a runaway car before any of us did.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't unstick the throttle. I pulled the parachutes. I did everything that they give us for safety-wise to stop the car, other than using my feet. You know, I don't know. It wasn't a dang thing I could do. I didn't want to go through the parking lot. It might hurt somebody else. I had to do what they make these things for, drive it right through the sand.
You did a fine job.
Thank you very much.
Fortunately, Corey McClenathan okay. The same cannot be said, though, for that $70,000 top fueler. It's a total loss, and the day is over now for Corey McClenathan. We'll come right back to Pomona, California, as we continue with round 2 in the top fuel division. But the pursuit of performance is not always met with success. Now watch the wings on the front of the dragster on the left side of your screen. That's the car driven by Jimmy Nix, Don.
When that wing broke, it removed 1,000 pounds of downforce off the front of the car. Jimmy Nix never knew what happened. The car crashed back to the strip, tearing the rear end out of it, breaking the fuel lines, and the engine obviously was blown up, and the oil with the nitromethane was coming out. It caught on fire, and it all goes back into the cockpit. You saw the body shred completely. That meant that all of this fire was going in with Nix. You can see it's in the cockpit with him. He's traveling about 150 miles an hour, and he is helpless. He wants this car to hit something to stop, and it does. It hits the sand trap, it puts the fire out, and the car runs into the NHRA safety net.
Just like throwing sand on your campfire, it extinguished the blaze. NHRA's safety support team was right on the scene, and they were frankly a little amazed by what they found. Jimmy Nix had been conscious through the entire incident. All of his safety equipment had done its job, but still they choppered him to the hospital. And preliminary reports, Jimmy Nix with second-degree burns to his hands only.
Brotherton in round 1 was facing Robert Reel in the near lane, and everything was going fine, Don, until the end of the race.
It looked like Brotherton just had a nice, easy pass till the engine exploded. We see the parachutes getting burned. The car has run nearly 290 miles an hour. Brotherton cannot get it stopped. He tries desperately to save the car, not go into the net. That was a mistake. He turns the car over on its side.
So it was a wrecked dragster for Michael Brotherton, getting out of the car okay, but he didn't want to believe that he was out of the competition.
Michael, you almost pulled it off. You almost
tried to save it. I mean, I knew we won. I don't know what happened. It come apart in the lights.
Chutes burned off.
Yeah, well, Ronnie said they come out, but they just fell on the ground. They were wadded up. I tried to get it to slide to a stop so we could race next round because I saw the wind light come on and a lot of fire in the cockpit. I don't know. It's a little tweaked. It ain't broken, too. We got A-frames in the trailer. We might give it a shot.
Oh, what a miracle.
Worsham in his first Nitro Funny Car final. Hoover hoping to take his first Nitro Funny Car victory.
Notice Del Worsham's picked up a new sponsor. A lot of things happened overnight.
Great launches. Looks like Worsham with the lead, but Worsham breaks out in flames. A huge fuel fire on Del Worsham's car, struggling to get it under control. He heads for the guardrail to help in getting it stopped. The safety hatch is open. Here comes Del Worsham, and that's the best news of all.
Worsham uninjured because of that safety fire suit. He's running away from the car now. He'll wait on the PTS truck to pull into place. Looks back at it wondering what happened.
It had to have been a massive breakdown of the fueling system. Fuel from one end of the car to the other on the inside. Let's take another look.
The car is one burning inferno before he ever gets to the 8th mile mark. Now he's trying to get it stopped. Can you imagine what the driver is seeing inside that car? Nothing but smoke and flame. That's one reason Del Worsham turns to his left into the guardrail. He wants to get the car stopped so that he can get out of it. The car contacts the guardrail. He knows he's going slow enough that he won't get hurt. The hatch is open now. You'll see him climb out.
There is Robert Leonard in the black coat, IHRA National Event Director. Our Brett Kepner is down there as well, surveying the scene. Let's get his report.
Obviously one of the biggest fires we've had in IHRA competition in years, but you did a masterful job of getting this thing on the brakes and got out of it quick. You said you thought the blower came off.
Well, I seen the whole dashboard kind of blew up, and then there was fire, a bunch of smoke. I pulled the fire bottles, undid the escape hatch as soon as it came to the stop, out with the belts and out the top.
Did you feel like you were with him?
I just wanted out of the car is all. I could feel the heat.
Give him credit. A great driving job by Del Worsham, having the moment of his short career in these volatile funny cars.
A little hard to see the Christmas tree of Memphis, so he brings them in. Gives him the OK sign. Actually, you might have to rate Hoffman a little bit of a favorite here. He has lane choice, and that's a huge factor. Good race. Gorgeous race. What a race. Whoa, and John Force is ablaze. The tires blow off. Force crosses the track, smashes into the wall. This is a horrible incident for John Force. Sliding down the racetrack, still right side up into the dirt. The car, I believe, yes, has flopped over onto its side as we look. Oh, John Force is out of that car, Brock.
Yeah, he's crawling free. Looks a little dazed, but apparently he's not badly injured. What a crash. I'll tell you what, that's a tough man, but he took a real lick when that car whacked that wall at over 200 miles an hour.
And there's the best thing that could have happened to him. You'll notice in replay when he hits the wall and strips the body off of the car, it continues to burn on the racetrack as we speak. Let's watch the race. We neglected to tell you who even won the race. Obviously, due to the problem with John Force, we will do that now. Force appeared to have the edge. The motor right there started to go away. Then it broke the connecting rods. Hoffman wins by several inches at best. The car immediately lights up. Usually it takes a little longer to build this kind of an inferno. Here you'll see the tires blow off of the car right there. The parachutes are useless in all of that heat. It is now, right there is really where the second tire came off. It is now dragging on the chassis. Is very little steering. Hoffman, fortunately, had both parachutes out. He has a horrible opportunity to watch John Force hit that wall so hard, the car turning completely around backwards.
There you see the halt of the car coasting to a stop. A testimony to the way builders like Murph McKinney and other pro drag race car builders construct these machines. The roll cage stays intact, the engine's in the car, and apparently Force is okay. Let's take another look from inside the cockpit. 200 plus miles an hour, suddenly the cockpit is engulfed in flame, and all that saves John Force is his fire suit.
Well, hard to believe after what we all saw, but John Force, he's in the ambulance, but pronounced pretty fit considering what you went through.
Yeah, Steve, I feel good. Them safety safari guys, I love them summer guns. I couldn't believe it. She was backwards, and I still had fire, and then I realized there was no body, and they were right on top of me, but then she rolled, and I couldn't figure that out, and just kind of climbed out, but pretty exciting day. But we got a brand new spare one in the trailer and one by Pluger being built. They ain't putting us out of the deal. And the rest of them guys, we took an 800 points lead, and that's what it's all about.
Eddie Hill was alongside Clayton Harris, and for the first time in my long drag racing experience, we saw a dual kaboomer. Watch this. The yellow car of Eddie Hill, the
tire smoke, the engine blows. Seconds later, Clayton Harris' engine blows. Neither driver wants to give up. With the tires burning off the vehicle, Eddie Hill crosses the finish line first and swings right in front of Clayton. Don Garlitz.
Eddie Hill did a masterful job of handling the car with one tire. It is very difficult. Car dragging on the frame. Ursi Hill, his wife, sees the accident, doesn't know whether Eddie's been hurt or not, certainly knows a lot of parts have been destroyed, and they had destroyed a lot of engines here. Eddie Hill, he got out of the car, he was fine. Looks the damage over here. We have another look at it in slow motion. Eddie Hill takes a slight advantage off the starting line. Looks like it's going to be an easy win. The tires break loose, then the engine blows, and a lot of heat is generated, causing a lot of problems. Then Harris' engine blows and catches on fire. Here it is very, very spectacular. But in just a few moments, something happens to Hill's tires. They explode. Part of the tire goes up, takes off part of the wing. Here we see the wing disintegrating. Hill has a lot of handling problems, but he gets the car stopped safely. So does Clayton Harris. Neither driver is injured.
Eddie, you probably were unaware you were on fire. You couldn't have been aware, so was Clayton Harris.
Now, I knew we both had troubles, but I didn't know how bad of troubles he had, and I knew I had a lot of trouble, especially when I got over in his lane down here in the shutdown area. I didn't know whether he was going to nail me or not, but fortunately, we didn't get together. That was a wild one there.
Apparently, a piece of debris punctured a tire?
Yeah, we hung the rods out of another engine. That's the third engine we fed that deal this weekend, and that about killed us budget-wise.
Glad to see you're okay.
Well, thank you. Yeah, at least I'm all right.
You okay, Ursi?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just glad he's okay.
Well, the funny car category didn't lack for mayhem either, Dave McClellan, especially in round number 2 when the 16th qualifier, Gordon Mineo, came up against the surprising, again, Paul Smith, who had qualified number 9 right in the middle of the pack. But that's not the story. Mineo in the near lane is.
A huge fireball was the Pontiac Trans Am as Mineo was fighting to regain control. He kept it off of the guardrail, but the fire did not diminish. As he brought the car to a stop, the safety safari crew was quickly on the scene, but even quicker than that, the emergency hatch was coming open, indicating that Gordon Mineo was trying to get out of the car. He jumped out into the arms of the safari crew and was uninjured.
Well, that escape hatch, now we know why they're in there.
I'll tell you what, if you just stop and think and you use your head in there, undo your belts, undo your safety hatch, come on out.
Don't panic.
Don't panic. Most people do.
The track at Dallas is especially treacherous for short wheelbase sportsman cars. The all-concrete surface amplifies any problem, be it mechanical or driver related. In the competition eliminator class, Dave Blair in the near lane found this out the hard way. As we look again, for unknown reasons, the car took a sharp right turn just past the finish line. The scary part was that the machine hit the guardrail directly on the roll cage. After bouncing off the far wall, it proceeded across the track, tumbling just once, and came to rest at the opposite guardrail. The safety crews had seen the intensity with which the car hit the first guardrail, but it was only a few moments until Dave Blair appeared from the door of his destroyed machine.
Well, he says he needs the record. Austin said it earlier because it's worth 200 points and 50 points because that also would be the low elapsed time of the event. But you have to leave the race with a record at below ET. You can't set it in the mid-round and have somebody better it. But, of course, this is the final race. In front of car, Cruz Pedregon and John Force. Everyone here is on their feet. Pedregon smokes the tires. Force has smoked the tires. Force may have hit the wall. For sure he's hit the wall. Here comes Pedregon. And it is Pedregon. His crew cannot see through all the tire smoke. Neither can Force's crew to tell exactly what has happened. Technically, this race was over when Force tagged the wall. That would have disqualified him, but why ruin a good story? Might as well call it all the way to the line. Pedregon got there first no matter what, Brock.
Unbelievable. It looked like a demo derby, a short track stock car race or whatever. As we watch Pedregon immediately go up in smoke, he veers off course, and look at Force. He is out of control as well. He fishtails a little bit there, and as you said, as we can see from this other angle, Force heads for the fence, but gets on the throttle on and off,
there. He whacks the wall, and that instantly disqualifies him, but John Force does not quit. As you can see, the throttle on and off with the flame pouring out of the pipes. You can see Pedregon in the other lane also on and off the throttle, up and down on the RPM range, and he wins it by half a car length. What a race.
Well, Brock, down here at the far end, I can still hear the fans screaming. It wasn't quick, it wasn't fast, but what a show.
Steve, it wasn't pretty, but we won, you know.
Describe it.
Well, our car blew the tires off. We overpowered the track. We're wanting to set the national record in the final round, and, you know, we just overpowered the track, and I felt it go away, and I thought, oh, it's over. Then I looked over, and I saw John having trouble, so I just did everything I could. I did everything I could, throttle on, brake. I was out of control, but I didn't hit a wall across center line, and we got there first. We won. Doesn't matter how, but we won.
Were you even watching for us, or did you care? You had your own problems.
Well, once I saw he was having trouble, I was on a mission to get to the finish line first. And you know, these cars, if you smoke the tires early, the momentum's not there. So pedaling I would only do that in that situation, the qualifying run or something like that. You take a chance breaking a drive shaft or hitting the wall. But yeah, once I saw him have a problem, I just went. I said, get to the finish line however you can.
You earned your driving stripes today, believe me, young man.
Well, I got to keep up with the crew. I have the best crew, McDonald's, Larry Miner, Coca-Cola, Vintage Design. We couldn't be happier.
All right, let's go back to Brock.
Well, Steve, we've got some problems with John Force. He's still in the car. NHRA paramedics looking at him, checking him over. He seems to have been shaken up. Can you get a closer look?
Well, they're telling me now, Brock, when they first arrived on the scene, that he was unconscious. Obviously, he shut the motor off and got the parachutes out, and then apparently from the shot he took against the wall and maybe the emotional drain, I'm seeing the championship probably slip away. John just took a little nap. He's going to be okay. He's a strong, tough competitor.
Watch the yellow machine of Mike Stawicki. Off the launch pad, the car grabs, heads into the guardrail, shatters the signage, and sets off the Scotch Guard fireworks. A broken axle on the machine. Stawicki got one run in on the weekend. He did not qualify for the show. Here's another look. Just barely missing going over the wall and into the trackside catch fence. Mike Stawicki with a very dangerous looking accident there. Here's a look from behind. Now watch as the car grabs on the left side with the front wheels in the air. No steering control for Stawicki. The trackside fence right there to keep the incident contained. And though Stawicki's day was done, did give the fans a little taste of some early fireworks. Obviously, the track shut down for an extended period of time while the PTS Professional Track Services crew went out there to look things over. As you can see, Mike Stawicki climbed out. A bad, bad afternoon for the driver from Medina, New York. Ostrander looking for his first victory since 1987. Wayne Bailey, the winner of this race in 1990, smokes the tires, but Ostrander goes up in flames. Bailey wins. And now the concern is for Ostrander across the center line, trying to get it stopped. He has lost air from the left rear slick, but he gets it stopped in good order. Total meltdown of the magnesium case around the clutch mechanism. The PTS crew on hand as Jack unbuckles and climbs out. Wow, that was a run. The biggest action came before the sun ever went down. This is Texan Doug Foxworth, winner of the opening event at Darlington, South Carolina. Watch what happened in his qualifying matchup with Diesel John Carey.
Well, it looked like everything was going to be fine, Bob. All of a sudden, John Carey, a tremendous explosion, lost control of the car, and as you can see, T-boned right in to Doug Foxworth. There was nothing he could do. He was completely helpless as Diesel John waded into him, although Diesel John couldn't help it either. The car literally went out of control after that violent engine explosion.
And as you can see, before the tangled wreckage of both cars even reached the end of the strip, the Professional Track Services crews were there. Looks like the right rear slick exploded on Carey's car.
That's right, Bob, and that was a result of that blower explosion. Something went over and hit that slick and caused it to explode. Diesel John was completely out of control.
You can still see parts flying around. There's a front wheel going right across the middle of your screen now.
The team is literally building a brand new car. And even though it's a couple of hours after the crash, this is going to be an all-night effort, and it's involving racers and crewmen from all over the Top Fuel fraternity. We talked to the driver of this incredible mishap, or one of the drivers who went through it, I should say, Doug Foxworth, to find out what it was that he felt was happening.
I think Kerry blew a tire. All I know is I threw the parachutes out. It's right at the point where you really start relaxing. You're turning the computer off, you're turning all the switches off. You're really kind of looking around, thinking about the run, and all of a sudden, he was in my lane, and it was just way too late to correct. I tried to move over, but by the time I was moving over, he was already on top of me. We came to this deal for the long haul for the season. I mean, we came for the points championship for the whole program. We got an excellent running car. We got a great team. I mean, we're all willing to do what it takes to run. Of course, we're extremely disappointed. We're down a long ways. I don't really know if we can be serious contenders for tomorrow.
Down the track they go, and Foxworth blows over. A huge crash for Doug Foxworth. The car comes apart. You see him there in the roll cage. One final roll over. He stops on all four wheels, or what's left of it, and right now we see him moving. He is moving inside that cage. Now we have access to the IHRA officials radio network, courtesy of Racing Radios. Let's listen in.
Tell him on the starting line he's okay. Tell him on the starting line. Somebody get over and tell him he's okay. The driver's okay. We're here with the driver. The driver appears to be okay. He shook up, but no evident damage so far.
And that's good news to Doug Foxworth's crew, waiting anxiously at the start line. Now here's another look, the dreaded blowover. You can see the car starting to lift at about the 8th mile mark. He turns completely over, comes down, disintegrates the top end. Look how far through the air that car flew before it ever actually come to impact with the asphalt surface. These cars are incredibly strong. As the bodywork is shed, you notice how the frame rails and the roll cage hold together. Look at the reaction of the crowd. Right on top of it, a bird's eye view. Now watch this one final roll slowly over. Foxworth just tucks in and holds on. The smartest thing he could do. Keep the arms inside the chassis. And note also that the car doesn't hit anything. It kind of tags the wall with a nose. Here from our ESPN finish line camera, you see the car take out the lights and watch as the debris follows him down the racetrack. Well, those parts being moved along by inertia, there's the wing. It caused the whole problem.
Did it hurt right here, dog? Yeah, I think it's just because I hit the tubing when it was... Yeah, because you got a cut out. It come back down and hit the ground. Did you? Okay. It's mostly just like a hit in the head. That's my biggest problem. Still dizzy? Yeah, I mean, it's getting better, but... Is it? You got tingling on your lips and stuff, or... No? What about your nose? No? No, it's just like dizzy at all? It's a real bad headache, and you can't focus on everything real well. Okay. I got hit on the head last night, too. Yeah. You want to take a ride to the hospital and get checked out? Probably wouldn't hurt. Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea.
We know it's going to be in the 80s somewhere, according to those guys, as we get ready to go. The sun beginning to set here at Pomona. Steve Evans, a great race on tap.
Absolutely. I wouldn't wager a sou either way. You're running with Kenny Bernstein. We don't see a motto. Bernstein, engine goes away. Bernstein sideways in the middle of the racetrack. Kenny Bernstein in big, big trouble. Bernstein is over the rail, on fire. We are going to rush to the scene. Brock Yates, pick it up.
All right, a tremendous crash. As you saw, the engine broke loose from Kenny Bernstein's automobile. The NHRA Safety Safari on the scene almost instantaneously, trying to get to Kenny. He's still in the race car, as the paramedics on this crew are the best in the business. Having a look at Kenny. Hopefully he is all right. Let's have another look at this as Joe Amato goes on to a victory, which of course now becomes an anticlimax to this drag race. But Amato off with a little bit better reaction time, but Bernstein in it all the way as they are head-to-head, beginning to fall back. And there you see the engine fire that caused Kenny Bernstein's crash. An explosion there at about 3/4 track as they enter the lights at over 280 miles an hour. Bernstein sideways, now fighting for control. Of course, these cars are almost impossible to control with such long wheelbases. Tires gone, hits the guardrail very hard. A big impact there. As Kenny Bernstein had crossed the racetrack, we see an instant gout of fire. Of course, that is the fuel tank being thrown loose from the race car. So very difficult to tell exactly what's happening here as we go down to have a look at what's going on. There's Dale Armstrong, very concerned, apparently talking to Kenny, so he appears to be conscious. But at this point, difficult to tell his condition.
Yeah, he said he's okay.
I'm down there with Dale Armstrong. Dale just had a chance to lean into the cockpit. Is he conscious?
I just asked him if he's hurting anywhere, and he says, no, I'm okay.
And this car performed just as a top fuel dragster should. They are designed to break apart, as you see this car. The engine to leave the chassis, to get away from the driver with all of its weight. Kenny Bernstein over the rail. We have not seen a car over the rail in recent memory. I can't remember the last time. But the good news from his own crew chief, Dale Armstrong, is that he's talking to him. He says he doesn't hurt anywhere. And here yet is another look at a vicious crash.
Well, Steve, as you notice there, the roll cage, which protects Kenny Bernstein, as we watched it one more time, this horrendous slide all the way across the racetrack to impact on a gateway here. Perhaps an unfortunate hit. He might have caromed off had he not gotten into that gate, but he is out of the car and all right, and the integrity of that race car saved his life.
Kenny Bernstein is indeed out of the car. They were going to cut the roll cage off. Kenny said, I'm okay, let me out of this thing. Kenny Bernstein is a very fit man. He works out at the gym, he runs. Kenny, you're indeed okay?
I'm okay, Steve. Tell everybody I'm fine. I'm a bell rung a little bit. Kind of feel like a NASCAR Cup car driver here at Atlanta, but not too bad.
And I'll bet you that Kenny will be in Daytona tomorrow for the Daytona 500 to see his driver start 20th on the grid in his NASCAR car. Nothing will stop him from doing that. We wish we could talk to Joe Amato. We can't. We're all out of time. Thank you all for joining us here live on TNN. He's okay.
In the second round, the Huntington Beach, California resident Scott Jeffreyon brought the Mopar Parts Dodge to the starting line from his number 11 qualifying spot, only with a 727. But he upset five-time winner here in Phoenix, Bob Glidden, in the first round. His competition here in round number 2 was Kurt Johnson, who got the break of the race. When Jeffreyon left a red light at the starting line, Johnson won the race with a 720 and then disastered. The car spinning and tumbling over until it finally struck a retaining wall at the end of Firebird International Raceway. And Kurt Johnson's mother, Arlene Johnson, was on the starting line looking on intently. The NHRA safety safari crew immediately on the scene and tended to Kurt. In replay, you can see the rear wheels locking up, the parachute never deployed, and the air got underneath that Oldsmobile, and Kurt Johnson had the wildest ride of his brief career. As it slammed into the retaining wall, it then flipped back over onto its four wheels, and the safety safari was immediately there.
Well, Dave, Kurt Johnson is out of the car. Precautionary measures being taken by NHRA's Safety Safari and Medical Services team. They've got a neck brace on him there, again, strictly as a precaution. They lifted him out of the car. He wanted to get out under his own power, but he appears to be okay. He just smiled up at us and said, well, I guess I got it all dirty, huh? So he's certainly not happy, but he appears to be physically in pretty good shape. Kurt, you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine, Steve.
At the finish line, the car simply broke in half and sent Corey McLenathan on a ride that will reverberate throughout the rest of his drag racing career. As the car scraped to a halt in its roll cage, an immense fireball engulfed the rear of the car, burning McLenathan on his hands and forehead. What happened is easily explainable by the laws of physics. For more downforce, the team had set the rear wing for maximum attack. As the front wheels planted the nose, the rear wing torqued the chassis literally to the breaking point. With all directional stability gone, there was no controlling the car, and it became inevitable that Corey would hit the guardrail and, as a result, flip the car and ride back first through this inferno. The young driver was immediately airlifted to the University of North Carolina Burn Center in Chapel Hill, where a full medical evaluation was performed.
Well, a little better news. Corey Mack is expected to be released from the hospital tomorrow. He has some second-degree burns on his hands and a little bit on his head, but is not expected to have to undergo any kind of skin grafting. The crew is headed for his hometown near Los Angeles to prepare his backup car. It'll be ready whenever Corey is.
When he tried to stop the race car, he started bouncing it, got airborne, and actually ran into the wall at the end of the Rockingham track. The car spun around and suffered severe frontal damage. Larry got out and was okay, but the car was damaged beyond repair and will not be able to show for round 2.
I don't think I hurt the car real bad. I just bought a new front end. Maybe I shouldn't do that anymore. So I'm going to send it up to get it fixed. I'll be okay.
And this was a round of racing that Tiffany will not soon forget, nor will any of us that saw it. Tiffany in the Pyro car in the near lane. All was well at the start, but suddenly her engine blew, putting oil into the tires, and this is what resulted. Brock was there to make sure everything was okay.
Yeah, I am okay. I just have a little cut on my thumb, and my spirits are definitely down. I'm really upset about the car, I think, more than I am myself.
You did a great job trying to save it. We watched you, but it just couldn't gather it all up.
No, and I guess it's unfortunate. It's my first engine blown, so I didn't know that it blew, but I guess now I will know what it feels like to blow an engine and maybe be a little more prepared next time.
What did it do? Just take a sharp right on you?
Well, really, the power just died on it, and I didn't really know what was going on because I was looking at the tach, and it started going back up, so I thought maybe something had just gone wrong, and I wanted to stay in it. And then before I really knew what was going on, it was going sideways, and I thought I could catch it. Like in Atlanta, I had a near miss, and it just wouldn't go, and it just hit the wall, and from there, I don't remember really.
Funny car. Remember Whit Bazemore, what he said earlier? You drive a funny car long enough, you're going to have some fires. He hadn't anticipated this one.
Not only a fire, but a serious impact with the guardrail on both sides of the racetrack. All Whit could do was just hang on for the ride. The car came to a stop. He was able to release his safety harnesses and climb out under his own power. After examination, he was okay.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a funny car racer, and I'm a funny car racer now, but every once in a while you got to have second thoughts. We'll be back, I'm sure. My head's a little sore right now.
He would be back all right, but not at the wheel of the Bazemore Evans machine. This was the end of that relationship, and as a car owner, Whit Bazemore retired. Not much left in his inventory.
2 weeks ago, top fuel racer Doug Herbert won his first ever national event at the Oldsmobile Spring Nationals. Here in Topeka on Friday, first qualifying session, his fortunes took a disastrous turn. For reasons not yet determined, at 286 miles an hour, Herbert's left rear slick blew out. He hit the left-hand wall hard. Back across the racetrack, the car slung around. Now the rear end and engine elevate the cockpit enough to get it over the highest wall on the championship trail. He then encountered an unmanned scaffolding, which may have acted as a catch net in some ways. I can tell you when I arrived on the scene, I feared for the man's life. NHRA Safety Safari, their trained technicians were all there, the Life Flight helicopter, and Doug Herbert, though unconscious for the first 5 minutes or so, was okay. Battered and bruised, but no broken bones. Incredible, Brock.
It was indeed, and a testimony to how strong these cars are. Fortunately, no one was on that camera stand, or else we could have had other injuries. But Doug Herbert, as we watch the medevac helicopter move away, is going to return to racing and in good shape, thank goodness.
12 months Gordon Minio has had. Unfortunately, crashes and fires, you name it, and the Western Auto Nationals was no exception. This was in qualifying. The good news is, once again, Gordon Minio rode out an inferno.
Well, Gordon, enough is sometimes enough. This has got to stop somewhere for your own personal safety.
Yeah, I hear that. I really don't know what happened in there. I don't know if it blew through the clutch, pitched the rod out, what happened. It wasn't all that bad of a run, I didn't think.
No, it was not. You're used to fighting these fires.
Yeah, I guess I had to open up a little school, huh? Everybody else has.
I'd hope nobody enrolls.
Anybody needs some help with it, though, I can help them.
As far away from each other as they could. They made no eye contact. There was none of that good race, John, or good race, Bruce. None of that.
Just not a lot of love lost between those two. Here's Bruce Nielsen hoping to advance to his first ever semifinal. In round number 1, he got around Jim Epler out of Vancouver, Washington in the Rug Doctor, and it was not without peril to Jim Epler.
No, that's right. This was earlier today. Watch the Rug Doctor car. A brand new machine. And he burned the shiny right off it.
Physically, Jim Epler is okay, even smiling, but as you look at your brand new car, you got to be, well, grief-stricken.
Well, I really am. Have all the Rug Doctor people out here this weekend at Safeway and trying to do a good job for them, but I don't know why I let go, but well, see what happens, try and get back together for Sonoma.
Well, you did a good job of getting it to the safety safari.
Yeah, I just a little trouble getting out of it, but take a little too much smoke.
We saw perhaps the worst accident that I think Dave McClellan and I have ever witnessed in the sport of drag racing. Maybe the fastest speed any race car has ever hit a solid wall. Watch the left side of the rear spoiler on Jerry Caminito's independent funny car. The spill plate comes off. Causes lots of aerodynamic problems. The car unloads, blows a tire. Well, you can just watch the rest. Obviously, after what we saw in Memphis, we feared for the man's life. He was medevaced to the best emergency facility in the entire state of Tennessee. And through the help of God and the good doctors there, Jerry Caminito is well on his way to recuperation. He and his wife Marion hope indeed someday to race again.
The headlines could have read, Flamin' Frank's son fights fire. That's right, Cruz Pedregon, the son of the late Frank Pedregon, better known as Flamin' Frank, in his early racing days, suffered his first taste of a funny car fire, and it was a big one indeed. The McDonald's Oldsmobile exploding, and Pedregon fought it to a stop in the uphill shutdown area, spun it out to let the safety safari crew play catch up. He climbed from the car and was okay.
I don't think the car's damaged really bad, and our guys are back there working on it, trying to get the thing back together so we can go racing again. That's the important thing to me right now, is getting back in the race. We're okay. Just keep going.
But let's pick up the action in round 1. You don't want to miss this. Scotty Coletta's in the near lane. Stevie Foster, that upstart from Texas, in the far lane. Coletta in big trouble. Stevie Foster has to miss him. Takes evasive action. Drives a top fuel dragster like a Lamborghini. Stevie Foster did a heck of a job of staying away from him.
I was really surprised, and I'm glad I seen him over the left-hand side when he come on around me. When we swapped over, I didn't have no control over it down there.
How bad is the damage to the car?
I don't know. Got down on the bottom of the frame. We'll see how much it does on the thing, whether we can fix it.
Well, the goal in drag racing is to go as straight as you can, but sometimes you have to make a left turn.
You look like a road racer out there.
You know what? In 1984, I ran a 5-liter Can-Am car here. I would have been proud of that move back then. Man, all I saw was him come across in front of me. I figured the only thing I'm going to do, if I went to the right, I was going to take us both out, so I just went to the left, unloaded the other parachute. Thank the good Lord. Is Connie okay?
He's fine.
That's all that counts. We can fix these two clunkers.
At 314 miles an hour. Good God. Kenny Bernstein, you love history, right? How about 314 miles an hour?
Oh, man. I can't say enough for Dale Armstrong and the crew, Brooks, the whole guys with the Budweiser King team. I just get to ride in this beautiful machine today, believe me.
Now, as a businessman, you're not going to like this part. You just missed 50 grand, but you still ran a 472.
Oh, we almost got the 50, didn't we? Sorry, Shelley, but you can sleep good tonight. She got the 50 grand.